Hey, Mr. Walker, how you doing today?
I tried to get the other number and wasn't working, so.
Okay, well, great. We are happy to have you here, Mr. Walker. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Farron, and I'm here with Brian. It's a real honor to speak with you. In the history of our country, we have never had a more honest and upfront Comptroller General, and I want to thank you for that and for doing the Wake Up Tour. You've done a real service for the American people, and I'd just like to ask you a few questions.
We're not recording. By the way, I'm still doing the Wake Up Tour. We're going to Pittsburgh next Tuesday.
Oh, really? So you're going to be continuing the Wake Up Tour?
Continuing the Wake Up Tour. And in addition, the foundation is going to fund phase 2 of the Wake Up Tour, and so we've just begun.
Okay, well, great. I wasn't aware of that, and I commend you on that. Every American should have the opportunity to see your Wake Up Tour. I've looked at a lot of your different interviews and information that you gave out, and I just find it amazing. And I would like to give you this opportunity to tell us your assessment of where our country is at financially.
Our financial condition is worse than advertised. We face a tsunami of spending that will hit our shores within the next few years due to rising healthcare costs and the retirement of the baby boom generation, and we are not prepared. In many ways, we have a much bigger subprime crisis that is on the back burner and is not being dealt with because a lot of the same problems that have manifested themselves recently with the housing market and mortgage-backed securities and the decline of Bear Stearns are similar to what's going on with regard to government's finances. And we need to start doing something about it.
I agree with you totally, and I would like to get your opinion, given the fact that this is an election year, and other than obviously Ron Paul, who's committed also to fiscal responsibility, what is your opinion on the other three candidates in terms of making any real changes to prevent this coming financial debacle?
Well, first, from a political standpoint, I'm an independent, and I try to be nonpartisan and non-ideological, therefore not endorsing any candidate or not, opposing a particular candidate by name, because that helps to make sure that the foundation is more effective and I'm more effective. But I will say this, no matter who wins, they need to do several things. One, they need to acknowledge during the campaign that they understand that this is a major challenge and that they're willing to make fiscal responsibility and intergenerational equity a priority. Secondly, they have to not take things off the table. They have to not take Social Security reform off the table, health care reform off the table, tax reform that could result in, more revenues off the table. Thirdly, they have to pledge to work on a bipartisan basis. And fourthly, they need to be able to use the bully pulpit, go directly to the people, and ideally to support a capable, credible, and bipartisan commission that would make recommendations to the next Congress and the next president for action. If they do that, that would be a giant step forward because it's not realistic to expect them to get into the nitty-gritty details of how they're going to end up reforming these individual programs. And politically, they're not likely to do that.
Well, I agree with you. We're speaking with David Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, and Brian wants to ask you a question, Mr. Walker.
Sure.
Mr. Walker, it's a great honor to speak to you. I'm a huge fan of yours. You're a true patriot. I'd just like to ask you, sir, do you feel less constrained now to address our fiscal crisis without any potential political backlash than you did as Comptroller General? And do you think politicians that do address this issue may suffer the repercussions of doing so?
Well, first, people that know me and people that have heard me speak, know that I'm fairly unconstrained. I try to be constructive. I don't blame any particular political party. I don't blame any particular person.
Yeah.
But I've always been a very candid individual. But let me tell you why I changed. The reason that I changed is because I believe we only have 5 to 10 years to be able to make a significant down payment on our financial imbalance and to send a signal to our foreign creditors that we're going to get serious about our future.
Yes.
And I also believe that I needed to be more specific about what our specific specific ways to potentially achieve reforms, to be able to endorse legislation, to be able to oppose legislation, to be able to build even stronger coalitions, and to be able to encourage even larger and more forceful grassroots efforts to bring pressure on Washington to act sooner rather than later. And while I've done a tremendous amount as Comptroller General, there's a line which you shouldn't cross, and my view is that line needs to be crossed, and for me to be able to do that, I've decided to go to the not-for-profit sector and head the Peterson Foundation.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. Do you also see the extraordinarily uninformed public as a major problem here, is trying to inform people?
There's no question. The fact of the matter is you can't solve a problem until people know that you have a problem that needs to be solved. And there are a lot of people in elected office that are telling people we don't really have a problem.
Exactly.
Or don't worry, we'll grow our way out of the problem, or we've had bigger deficits and bigger debt burdens as a percentage of the economy in the past than we do now, or the trust funds, are there for Social Security and Medicare, and they don't end up running out of money for a number of years in the future.
Right.
And while some of these things are true, they're grossly misleading. In the last 7 years, the total liabilities and unfunded promises for Social Security and Medicare alone for the federal government have gone up from $20 trillion to $53 trillion in 7 years.
Astounding.
That's $175,000 per person, about $455,000 per household, and median household income in America is less than $50,000 a year.
Absolutely.
And every year that $53 trillion number goes up $2 to $3 trillion a year. And if we balance the budget tomorrow, and we're heading the wrong direction on that, the deficit's going to be a lot bigger this year, in the next couple of years than it was last year. But if we balanced it tomorrow, which obviously we're not going to do, the $53 trillion number would go up at least $2 trillion a year. Because of all the mandatory spending programs, the type of programs that are on autopilot and are eating the rest of the budget.
Absolutely.
Do you believe, as many do, say like Jim Rogers, that the Federal Reserve banking system should be abolished?
Well, I think it needs to be reformed. I wouldn't say that it needs to be abolished. I mean, one of the things that we see going on right now is the Fed has been very aggressive in intervening. It's intervened with regard to Bear Stearns, which is not, by the way, an insured institution. It's intervened in order to try to be able to prevent a broader disruptions in the financial markets and in the investment banking system. It does that by using various tools that it has, which tools, can end up stoking inflation, among other things. And so I think that we have to keep in mind that, in some ways, we need to kind of rethink what the Fed's role is, especially as it relates to the regulatory role, because clearly somebody missed the increased risk associated with these types of new mortgage-backed securities. And one of the reasons we're having the problems we do right now is because there's not enough transparency, and therefore people really don't know who has the risk and to what extent they have the risk. And frankly, there's a big parallel between